Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast. You're going to be hanging out with just me today, Jocelyn. As some of the OG listeners know, we take turns sometimes to do a different topic that's on our heart. And today I wanted to share with you about our pregnancy journey update and how we're preparing for parenthood. Now, first disclaimer, we know that there are so many opinions on parenting, and this episode by no means is saying that this is the thing to do and this is how it should be done. I am just going to share what resonates with us and what feels aligned for us, and just share the excitement with you. So brief, backstory. We found out that we're pregnant in March, and we were on a trip, and I just had a feeling that I was pregnant. And honestly, it was very early. Most people probably wouldn't even know to take a pregnancy test at that, but I just felt something change. And it was like this gut instinct feeling. And I took a test on my own, and I waited a little while to tell Aaron because we were with friends. And so I waited till that night until we had some time alone. And what I did is I had Ellie write. Of course, Ellie's our dog, so she didn't actually write, but it was from her name. And it said, "Hey Dad, I found out today that I'm going to be a big sister. Love, Ellie." And I had that written and showed it to Aaron, and it was like, wow. He was like, really? Is this true? And it was so exciting. And to be honest, I was nervous to share with him because some of you know from listening to past episodes, but we weren't quite sure if having kids was going to be something that we were going to do. When we got married, neither of us was a hardcore, I've got to have kids, it's in my destiny, I must, it is a requirement. I was more so like neutral, like, yeah, maybe I want them, I'm not totally sure. Aaron was more of a, no, I don't want kids. And that was something that we just knew we were going to always have to check in on and just have frequent conversations. And so we checked in at least once a year and said, hey, how are we feeling about this? We had very open communication about it. And in the last year, it was something we both just talked about even more frequently. I had started to share that I was getting more to being like a yes, and I'd like them soon. And Aaron was still trying to get emotionally on board with it, and work through some of his fears around parenting and what that meant, and especially how would that impact our life and fulfilling our purpose, because we're very committed to our purpose here. So, he had to work through his own fears, and we were just communicating very openly about that. But to fast forward a little bit, we decided to really trust life, trust God, and to really take off the restraints. And so we got pregnant. We're very, very grateful that we did. And that's kind of where we are. So now I am almost 5 months pregnant at the time of recording this. And, I want to just share a bit of how we're taking this time in pregnancy to prepare for parenthood. And one thing I'm really grateful of is that we took time in our marriage, even if we didn't know if we were going to have kids, but to get our foundation set. And I want to share for any of you who are listening who are engaged or early in your marriage and you haven't had kids yet, I want to impress upon you how important it is to prepare your marriage for parenthood, to have a strong foundation. And of course, there's no perfect arrival, and I don't want any of you to listen and be like, but we didn't do any of that, and we have 3 kids now. What does that mean? Because you can start at any time. Even if you already have 3 kids, you can do that groundwork now, right? There's never the wrong time. It's just there's only this present moment. So anyway, we've been taking this time to really prepare, and we're grateful that we have a strong foundation for our relationship and our marriage. And we also know, because a lot of the couples that we work with are parents. I'd say probably 80% really are parents, whether young kids or adult children. And so we get the behind the scenes look at the challenges come up. What challenges do couples encounter when parenting is part of it? And it's like just an extra layer, right? It's like all couples kind of experience communication challenges, but then there's just an extra layer that happens when you're parents, right? Or conflict, for example, or lifestyle and having your own needs met. And so because we get to see this day in and day out, we knew, hey, we need to really prepare for these things ahead of time. So I want to share those, but really quick, I also just want to share some of the things we're doing in preparation for a natural birth. So something that's important to me is having a natural birth. My philosophy, again, by no means no judgment for anyone's journey, but I truly believe that the body is a miracle, and I believe that birth is a natural event and can happen outside the hospital and doesn't require medication for most people. Of course, there are high-risk cases, and every situation is so different. But for me, what really resonates is to prepare for natural birth and having the body do what it is designed to do. And so we are, number one, I'm seeing a chiropractor that helps with the body getting into alignment. We're hiring a doula to help us emotionally and spiritually, for birth. We're also doing a hypno-babies, that's what it's called, a hypno-babies course, which actually teaches the mom to get into a hypnotic state and to tap into the part of ourselves that can see pain differently. And I'm by no means an expert in this, but from what I have understood so far is that our body has pain, but then there's our perception of pain. And what we do with that, and what do we say about the pain, and how do we handle it? So we're doing that Hypno-Babies course soon. We're actually going to be starting, and Aaron wants to do that with me. And so something that's exciting about us doing this as a couple together is he wants to be involved. Even though he won't be, doing the physical birthing, he wants to be my partner in that. So he's going to be doing a lot of these programs with me, so he can, number one, coach me through it and be there for me the day of birth, but also so that he knows, he can instruct me and he can be right there with me, doing it with me. So it isn't just, oh, she's doing the work. It's like we're doing it here together. So we're doing that and doing some body work, still exercising. Finding a birthing center. I want to birth at a birthing center that my friend had an incredible experience at. So for those of you who don't know, you can give birth at the hospital, at home, and then there are birthing centers which are run by midwives, and midwives focus solely on birth, right? Like that's all they do is birth. And it is an environment that feels really peaceful, almost like home, but it just happens to be set up for birth. You can even do a water birth there. And there's no wires, no equipment. There's not beeping like the hospitals. And so I'm really excited to just feel peaceful, be in the water, no hospital noises, very low stress. So those are some of the things we're doing in preparation for birth. Now in preparing for parenthood, because like I said, it is important wherever you are in your relationship to really prepare your marriage for parenthood. And so some of the things that we're doing is, one, discussing expectations. As you have heard us talk about on many episodes, unmet, unexpressed expectations can be a huge source of conflict for couples who are parents. All couples actually, but an additional layer when parenting is a part of it. And so we're discussing expectations, and that includes even some of the unconscious expectations about how each of us were brought up. What did we see each of our parents do? So do we have certain expectations about, oh, she's supposed to do this and he's supposed to do this? We're also discussing expectations just about, the first few weeks with the baby. And of course, there's going to be things we can't anticipate. We are by no means under the disguise that we're going to just be prepared for it all and there won't be surprises. But we're discussing as many expectations as we can identify so that we can be prepared for those. And, discussing sleep expectations, feeding. One of the funny things Aaron wanted me to share with you all is he thought babies were kind of like adults and they just went potty, number 2, poo, once a day, right? Like most adults. And our friend was going, hey, Aaron, they're actually, as newborns, probably going to go about 14 times a day or somewhere in that range. And he's like, what? 14 diaper changes per day. So, discussing, of course, expectations around things like that. And it's been really insightful for us to understand what some of those expectations are and getting on the same page about them, and including even like alone time. How do we want to set things up ideally to where we each can have a little bit of alone time as well? Maybe not, of course, the first week or 2 weeks, because we're going to be so immersed in baby. But, how can we make sure we're both taken care of as well? Also, expectations around in-laws, right? And when do we want the family to come visit? Both sides of our family. When do we want to introduce the baby? How long do we want them to stay? Do we want help? Do we not want help? And so being able to really discuss that with in-laws so that it's not one of us having a certain expectation and the other person being frustrated about, hey, I didn't want it to go that way. We really want to be on the same page about that. Another way that we're preparing for parenthood is discussing how we want to communicate in front of our kids, including when they're young. We personally believe that yes, there's a certain level of comprehension that is really only in, after the first year, second year, but we believe that babies understand energy. And that can be really influential, including in my womb, not just when they're out in the world. We believe that energy is impacting them. And so we're discussing how we want to communicate even when they're a newborn, even when they're only 1 year old, even if they don't understand all of the words. They could feel tension, they could feel anger, they could feel sadness. And so we're discussing, how do we want to handle it if one of us says things in a way that doesn't feel good to the other person? What if we say something, out of frustration? And so we're discussing, that we're reading a lot about something called conscious parenting. Some of you maybe have heard it, some of you haven't. If you haven't, I highly recommend at least exploring it. There's a book we're starting to read. We've been listening to podcasts that happen to be about conscious parenting. And conscious parenting from the, again, I'm not an expert in it, but from what I understand is being highly intentional about raising a human being, not just someone who's only getting security and the typical things, right? Like the food and all those things, like truly raising a conscious being, which has a lot of self-awareness, compassion, love. And so we're learning about that. Like, how do we want to show them conscious communication and self-awareness? And how do we want to handle it if we have a conflict in front of them? So we're discussing a lot of that. And we're also discussing, quality time together, being able to have date nights versus alone time, and some of the ways we want to set up our lifestyle so that we still can make it to the gym and we still can have some time to meditate. Like we plan on having the baby laying there while we meditate in the mornings. We still plan on going to the gym and having a support system. And of course, again, we're not saying day one. We do plan on getting a lot of just quality time alone with the baby, but in terms of long-term lifestyle, we have seen truly the behind-the-scenes impact of when couples are sacrificing themselves. And by no means do I think that parenting is easy and that it doesn't require, setting aside your needs sometimes because you're now responsible for another being. That is clear. And we have also seen when couples set up systems and when they set up support and when they get creative with time and they express their needs. I can't tell you how many. And in fact, there's a couple that we're recently coaching who's a parent, or their parents, and they are just now starting to tell each other, hey, I need some time with the guys. I need some time for self-care. And I've been holding these things back and I've been feeling like I lost myself, and that's impacting the way I'm showing up, right? And they're married and have children together. And so this is honestly more common than you'd think, that people are withholding and suppressing communicating these important topics to each other. And when we sacrifice ourselves completely and just think that there's no solution, that only builds into resentment. And The best parents that we have seen are people that are still taking care of themselves, and whatever that looks like for you. There's no perfect way that looks. And so again, I'm not trying to preach from like I've experienced this directly. We just happen to see it all the time on our sessions, and we see a huge difference between the couples who don't have any systems, schedules are not set up, support is not set up, and they don't take care of themselves and they don't talk about their needs, versus the couples that do. And it's possible. How do we know it's possible? Because we see the couples who have it put in place. And we see that, yes, it takes work and it's not perfect for them. And they still are able to fit in a lot of those things that are important to them. Date nights, alone time, together time, work time, exercise time. It is possible with creativity, with asking for help, and with expressing yourself. So let's see, going on, continuing to talk about preparing for parenthood. We're also talking about, parenting styles. How do we want to handle discipline? How do we want to handle, talking about holidays and faith, right? Like we're discussing so many of those things. And, I think the big thing is just making sure that our bond is really strong. Something that is important is that our child can feel that we are best friends and can feel that we are still ongoingly working on us as individuals and as a couple, and we want to be super authentic with them and not be trying to get it right and be perfect all the time. We want to show that we're human, and that includes being human in our relationship, right? But we want to show them and model to them what it's like to prioritize the relationship and to ongoingly be humble and work on things and discuss it. And so just giving you an update here. Again, none of this is the formula. This is just what happens to resonate with us and some of the things. Again, some resources I recommend. If you are in the pregnancy stage, I recommend looking up things about like hypnobirthing, doulas, natural birth, if that is intriguing to you. And then for those of you who are already parents or you're preparing for parenthood, look up things about conscious parenting. It's been so enlightening to us. We're excited to learn more. We aren't experts in conscious parenting, but we're going to practice. We're going to learn. We're going to discover it, and we'll share along the way about our journey. But the main message, besides just giving you an update, because we know some of you, we love the DMs. Many of you ask me daily, Jocelyn, how are you feeling? And how's it going for you guys? And so we truly love that you guys genuinely care about us and want to know about this update. So that was part of the intention, but also to just talk about the behind the scenes of preparing for parenthood and the intentionality, right? With both marriage, relationship, and parenting, it's all about intention. It's about preparation. And so I hope that I'm not giving you a formula, but instead an invitation to refocus on intentionality, to see that there are resources to always learn, to always improve, to always grow. But with that, everyone, I love talking with you all. And by the way, if you haven't already registered, we have our free web class next Tuesday, the 20th. So July 20th, we're doing a web class on communication. And if you haven't registered, by the way, I think we're almost to 300 couples now registered at the time of recording, then you want to get on board, because our web classes are really practical, very helpful skills, and not something that you're just going to see on an Instagram post. We go deeper into the skill, so you can actually go to onlinecouplesworkshops.com and get registered. Again, that's July 20th. It's a free web class on communication mastery for couples. And with that, everyone, we love you so much, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.